Show here on the Big Play Sports Network. It is great to have you along. Yeah, I know it's kind of rough. Even if you don't drink, you have a hangover. If you do drink, and how this thing all played out Saturday and Sunday, you definitely have some ringing in the ears. Welcome in, Chico Borman Show. And we will be with you over the next couple of hours with you until 2. We do it every day, Monday through Friday. Follow us on Twitter at Chico Show CLE. Also, you can head over to YouTube and find the show there. If you are not subscribed already, hit subscribe and you'll be set to go. Also available wherever you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, doesn't matter, and available on the iHeartRadio app where we stream the show live. All right. Here's what I'll say. Remember on Friday's show, everybody, and it's not just Friday's show, it was Friday's mood with everybody. Because, right after, say, Thanksgiving or the day of Thanksgiving, the next day, and this will happen for Christmas, everybody's in their warm and fuzzy personality, right? I'm just so grateful for all my family and friends and so grateful for my health and just, wow, just want to say thanks to everyone who got me to where I'm at right now. And so you're feeling good, right? And then Saturday happened, and then Sunday happened, and now we're back to, I thought you said you're grateful. Not anymore. We got to channel a little bit of that. I know maybe not all of it. I know you can't just erase what happened over the last couple of days, but just a little bit. Just a little bit. We'll make it through. We will make it through. All right. Plenty to get to today, as you can imagine. Coming up in the second hour of the show, we're going to visit with Anthony Schlegel. Schlegs, as he is known, former Buckeye linebacker. You may hear him. You hopefully do hear him, along with Bobby Carpenter for the Bobby Carpenter Show with Anthony Schlegel, aptly named, as they wrap up the Buckeyes each and every week. They're on Sunday nights at 8 o'clock, and we'll hear what Schlegs has to say from the game on Saturday against Ohio State. Or I should say Ohio State against Michigan. We'll talk to Schlegs about that just after 1 o'clock. There's a lot of, and I get it, a lot of emotion, and he's got to go, and what are we doing? And my goodness, is it the John Cooper years all over again? We'll talk to Schlegs coming up at 1. But we begin with the Browns, and I think I don't know if panic is the right word. Because, to be honest with you, the Denver Broncos are a good football team. At least they're playing like a good football team, and we're playing like a good football team going into yesterday's matchup at Mile High against our Browns. I think we envisioned, the defense is going to take control. The offense will do just enough. Denver's run defense, not very good, so they'll be able to run the ball. DTR will do just enough, hopefully play a clean game, and the Browns will get out of there with a victory. I don't think anybody expected the Browns to just roll over the Denver Broncos. But you thought a good chance that they'd somehow find a way. They've done that well this year, 4-0 and games decided by 3 points or less, and you've got Dustin Hopkins. They'll figure it out. Well, a funny thing happened on the way to that result or desired result. And I think the first thing for me, how about we go back to last week? Because remember, we gave a lot of credit because it was due to Kevin Stefanski, the Pittsburgh game, right? Like, you know what? He coached that game the way he had to coach that game. May have been a little bit too conservative for some, but in the end, he knew with the flow of the game and the way that the Pittsburgh Steelers offense or lack thereof was playing and the Browns defense, how they were dominating, that, okay, I'm not going to put DTR in any real tough spots, so Pittsburgh knows what's coming. Great. We got a lead. They'll have to come get us. They can't get us. We'll get out of there with a W. So, but in the midst of that discussion, and really it's been a topic with Kevin Stefanski for a while now, it's like you either love him or you hate him. And if there's any criticism of him, it immediately goes to people saying, oh, you want Kevin Stefanski fired. Nobody wants Kevin Stefanski fired. Not at all. And like I said, where credit is due, he has been given that credit. And last week was one of those games. Unfortunately, yesterday was not one of those games. Again, that doesn't mean that we want Kevin Stefanski fired, but he went back to try to be cute. That's exactly what that was. Denver came in ranked 31st, maybe 32nd, 31st, I believe, against the run. And for some odd reason, which Kevin Stefanski will do every now and then, Kevin decided we're going to go to the air with DTR. That might be what they're thinking too. So we're gonna play chess while they're playing checkers. And sometimes you hear that phrase a lot. Outthink yourselves. Try to get too cute. And I think some of that happened yesterday. And now, with a loss to the Denver Broncos 29-12, you're still right there in the playoff hunt. But I think right now it's not only that, it's now the questions that follow about injuries. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, how is he going to be? Is he going to be healthy? Is it already time to break the glass? Remember with Joe Flacco, it was got to break the glass, or you don't want to break the glass until you absolutely have to. If DTR struggles that much, God forbid gets hurt, then we're going to have to go ahead and do that. And it looks like the Browns are probably going to have to go ahead and do that, and Joe Flacco would very well be your starting quarterback, should anyway, we think, your starting quarterback against the Rams in L.A. Now, as far as on the defensive side of the ball, I think we are all holding our collective breaths when it comes to Myles Garrett. Ballmer, you all right over there? For somebody who should be down in the dumps, you're grinning ear to ear after two really, really tough losses for the Buckeyes and Browns.
Little communication error, I suppose. So I sent Anthony Schlegel, who we're planning to have on at 1, I sent him the link to StreamYard, right?
Yeah.
And apparently he just hopped on. And then he sent in like the group chat that we have for the Bobby Carpenter show. He's like, am I supposed to be on a show right now? I just hopped on StreamYard.
Well, basically, Schlegs can do whatever the hell Schlegs wants.
Yeah, and that's what I said. Like, technically 1 p.m., 49 minutes, but unless you want to come on now. So.
Yeah, 1 o'clock would be good, because I did want to talk primarily in hour 1 about the Browns, and then we will definitely, because there's plenty to talk about with the Buckeyes, whether folks want it or not. I know 2010, 216 diehard was like, oh, on Friday's show, too much Ohio State. Well, it was a big topic, so if you don't like it, then turn it off. You got an easy. It's not that hard to do. But as far as the Browns are concerned, now we all sit here and we wait. What's going to happen with Myles Garrett? Is that a serious shoulder injury? Now, Bohm, the latest I heard is he's going to get looked at. Remember, this is that Denver, the Broncos, followed by the Rams, and the Browns are going to fly to L.A., and they're going to work out at UCLA, I believe, stay out there, get ready for the Rams. Now, it was looking nice that, DTR would be able to work out at his old facility and the old friendly confines, but we don't know if he's going to be working out at all after that wicked shot, dirty shot, hits his head. He'll probably be out. But I think right now we are all waiting on the news on Myles Garrett. He said he heard a pop in his shoulder. He then played the rest of the game with that injury, and I don't know exactly when it happened, but I've heard a few reports say that Miles hurt that shoulder in the first half, and that he continued to play and finish the game. Did have to come out a little bit, every now and then, but, speaks to Miles' toughness, yes. The want to, which, he definitely has as well. It's going to, as he said, you're going to have to carry me off the field before I'm not going to play. But, are they going to be missing him for some games? If he does come back, is he going to be compromised in any way? And also Denzel Ward, who missed last week's game after an injury in the Steelers game. I mean, now all of a sudden you're talking about two guys. And yes, there's depth on that side of the ball. But now all of a sudden you're talking about two guys on defense that are, without a doubt, your best players. And not only your best players, but two guys playing at the best in their careers right now, Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward. We won't know. I don't know when the MRI is scheduled. They made it sound like they were going to fly to L.A. first, and he's going to get checked out in L.A., but I think we're all waiting on pins and needles. And like I said, yes, you do have some depth there, but we also know, and nobody's going to try to convince anyone otherwise, that there's somebody of Miles' ilk. There isn't. Not just on the Browns team, but I think in the entire NFL. There are guys that are similar. And, TJ Watt, you can talk about defense, but I've always said, like, what Miles does at his size and the ability to bend the way he bends, and you can't replicate that. So you do have Obo, and you do have Za'Darius, and you do have Shelby, and you do have Dalvin, and you have those guys that, hopefully can pick up some slack. But we also hope that that's not any kind of extended injury or, God forbid, a season-ending injury, because, Miles is having an incredible, incredible season. Denzel Ward, you wait and see on that. But I think right now, I don't sense frustration as much as I sense, like in Columbus, it's pure frustration. I think right now in Cleveland, it's a little bit of concern. But let me remind you of something. And I think we've all kind of, I don't want to say forgotten about this, because it's been front and center for a while now. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, we all wanted to believe the best, because this was the best case scenario, even after they acquired Joe Flacco. The best case scenario was always going to be Dorian Thompson-Robinson continues to get better and better and better, and he develops into, a good quarterback. Granted, it's Deshaun's team, but he just continues to get better and kind of shows you why the Browns had so much faith in him. And I'm not going to say that he hasn't done that, but I think it's unrealistic to think that this guy all of a sudden in a few weeks is going to become a bona fide, fringe starter. Like, he's not there. He's not there. I think one of the things we're starting to realize with him, and yes, there were a lot of drop passes, I wonder how many of those have to do with him. Now, I know if you hit guys in the hands or in the breadbasket, they got to haul it in. But Dorian Thompson-Robinson, from what we understand, has a fastball that feels like, triple digits on the radar screen, on the radar gun. Now, being able to figure out when you need to do that, when you need to use that, and when you need to back off a little bit, use a little bit of touch, he might be struggling with that. Some guys do. But he is what he is. I hate to say it like that. I know I've said that before this year, but he is what he is. P.J. Walker is what he is. We're hoping, okay, and I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, we are hoping that Joe Flacco can break that glass, grab the extinguisher, put out the flames, and guide this team into a playoff spot. Certainly, he's been there before. I mean, the advantages are right in front of us. The guy has been in these conditions before. He's played a long time. He's played in the postseason. He's played in some of the biggest games. He's also, what is he, Bohm? 36 years old, something like that, I think.
Getting there.
Yeah, 36 years old or getting there.
Wait, is it 38?
Maybe he
I'm
is
gonna look
38.
this up.
I thought it was 36, but he is getting up there. I did think it was unrealistic a couple of weeks ago, or even last week when they brought him in. People were like, "Well, he's just probably going to start last weekend against Pittsburgh." I'm like, no. I mean, he's got to learn some stuff first. But now it's a matter of, and we've been saying it, you've got to take care of the football. You've got to just play a clean game. And Joe Flacco, I think, at least gives you that opportunity. You'd also love the cherry on the sundae, which would be he can drive the ball down the field, and you're comfortable with him. More specifically, Kevin Stefanski is comfortable with him driving the ball down the field. Now you've got a whole different dimension. But first things first, how old is he, Bo?
He is 38.
He is 38 years old. Okay, so he is getting there, and then he's gotten there. He's not only just getting there to 36, he's gotten there, and he's getting there all the way to 38. Look, he's a veteran. It's a good thing they signed him. P.J. Walker is not the answer. I think everybody knows that. DTR really is not the answer, and I guess that's what this is all about. Like, we tried to convince ourselves that DTR he's going to get so much better each and every game, and then he's just not going to turn the ball over. And I just don't think that that's realistic for a rookie. That doesn't mean the guy's career is over. That doesn't mean that he can't make it in the NFL. But, this is the reality. This is the reality of the NFL. It is tough week in and week out, and that was a pretty good defense that he faced. And I don't think his coach, which we'll get to here in a moment, I don't think his coach set him up with the greatest opportunity to win right out of the gate. Yes, Bohm.
Chico, I think that it almost feels like a microcosm of why we as Browns fans are cursed, because it's like Deshaun Watson goes out and plays his best performance of the year, right? Finishes that second half 14 of 14. Oh, and then he's out for the season. DTR leads his best drive as a Cleveland Brown in his professional career, and suddenly you start to see signs of life, and like this offense can actually legitimately be something special with DTR at the helm. And then he gets laid out and he's out, and it's just
laid out and he's out
over and over, Chico, at just like so much devastation this season. The Browns have, I don't think it's biased to say the Browns have been one of the most unlucky teams in terms of injuries this year. Like, it's just been ridiculous. You've lost all your playmakers. Now we don't know the situation with Amari. The Miles injury like freaks me out because I've had a dislocated shoulder. I know he's a freak athlete, and I know it's not the same thing.
You did it with walking your dog Cinnamon.
Cinnamon dislocated my shoulder. You know what, Chico? My shoulder is still never the same. I have fears of like Deshaun being ruled out for the year because he doesn't want to cause permanent damage. Like, what if Miles keeps playing with this shoulder injury? Is that going to screw him up long term? Like,
can you play your guitar without any pain in the shoulder, Bohm, or do you just fight through it, suck it up?
I can play without pain in the shoulder, fortunately, because it doesn't involve throwing things. Okay. When it comes to throwing things, like I don't have the same velocity. I can't throw a football nearly as far as I used to, and it hurts if I try to throw it as hard as I can. I mean, it's funny, but I hate it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think I said it earlier. I don't know what the timetable is with Miles. Like, are they going to fly? They're going to fly, obviously, from Denver. They're going to go over to L.A., and again, they're staying in L.A. for the week, get ready for the Rams before they head back. And I thought I saw a report. Now, this may be accurate or inaccurate. I don't know. But I thought I saw a report that said that he's going to get the MRI at a hospital in L.A. What day, I don't know. Sooner rather than later. He needed help putting on his shirt yesterday. Again, another reason why I say don't even wear the shirt, Miles. You don't need to. That physique, just don't even wear one.
Perfect excuse.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have to wear one. But, when you hear somebody say and him say, I heard something pop, I mean, I don't know what that means. Is that a rotator? Is that we've had a lot of shoulder stuff lately. And look, we know Miles is tough. He finished out the game because I'll go back and check that out. But I'm pretty sure Miles, that happened sometime in the first half. And now he would miss some sequences and probably would need treatment or trying to get it comfortable with some sort of a brace or whatnot. But, he still was out there trying to get it done.
The concern on my end, Chico, is that he just wasn't as effective. You saw he had one pass deflection,
yeah,
and he was getting in some pressure a little bit, but no sacks, no real quarterback hits. Russell Wilson, one of the most sacked quarterbacks in the NFL, only sacked once. I wonder how much of that was maybe the possibility that Miles was just not as effective after having suffered this injury.
Why? Okay, I have a question. Now, I know Russell Wilson is not as mobile as he's been because, well, quite frankly, he's getting older. I mean, that happens. So I realize that he's not as mobile as he once was. But, I heard I don't know if it was some of the players or maybe it was Kevin say something along the lines of, we were surprised to see Russell Wilson run as much as he did. And it was well, that's what he's been doing. He's still doing it now. He might not be as effective or as dangerous as he was, but he can still do it, and he did it. I don't know. Let me get back to Stefanski for a moment because I'm already prepared. I know you guys are going to hit me with the, why does it always have to be a blame Stefanski? It's not all on him, but he is the head coach and he is calling plays. We can talk about the crazy pitch play. We can talk about Harrison Bryant being under center. We can talk, that's stuff that Kevin Stefanski will do that kind of you scratch your head. But going into that game, Denver, they don't have a good run defense. They just don't. 31, 32, whatever the hell it is. There's only 32 teams. And it seemed like that was an opportunity to, really impose your will, exert yourself, and go and run the football, establish the running game. Now, I know that, I think Kevin operates under that, well, yeah, that's what they're expecting too, so I got to have it. But sometimes it's okay. Hey, you may know it's coming, but you're not good at it. We know it's coming. We know you're not good at it, and we have the studs on the front line to get it done. We're just going to run the ball. I'm not saying, Michigan 32 straight times or whatever against Penn State, but we're going to run the ball. Kevin, it was all of a sudden he thought they had Dan Fouts and Wes Chandler and Kellen Winslow Sr. and Charlie Joyner. We're going to air it out. It's what are you doing? Kind of befuddling. I'll be honest with you. I wasn't that optimistic about this game. I picked the Browns. I'm not, this isn't hey, I told you so. Not by any means. But I thought the defense would play much better. And they, they had problems stopping the run. Again, that's an issue. But then, as I said, on the other side, I didn't quite understand the game plan. I did not understand the game plan from Kevin Stefanski on the offensive end.
Chico, it felt like if DTR were to just stay healthy, they were very much in that game. They finally started to get some rhythm and some momentum going offensively. And the defense, I felt was doing just enough. At times, the offense put them in tough situations, obviously turned it over a couple of times and set them up and they still seemed relatively strong to me. Now there were a few chunk plays, and there was one drive in particular where the Browns just could not stop their run game. But I felt like overall, if DTR just didn't get hurt, like we were right in this game, Chico. We could have seen some heroics. It was the
Do you? I mean, are you still? I guess what I'm getting at with this is this. I don't know what we have with Joe Flacco. I think, unfortunately, because of injury, not because of poor play, but because of injury with the concussion, I think he's out at least this week. I mean, that was a very, very tough hit, and that head smacked hard on that ground. So he's probably out this week. So that glass that we kept saying in emergency break glass, it's probably going to get broken this week. But I think with DTR, people started to believe. And I don't want to throw water on this, but like he has a ceiling, and I think we wanted to believe like, oh, he's just going to improve each week. He's just going to improve each week, and he's going to get into a rhythm. He's going to get in. It's still a gamble. I mean, even if he plays well the rest of the regular season, we hope he does. We know the playoffs are a different story, and, I know you'll cross that bridge when you get to it. But, right now the Browns are at 7-4, and the feeling from last week to this week, and my God, this has been the story each and every week with the Browns, really with the entire NFL. I mean, each and every week there's a new development where you're going, I didn't see that coming. But I just know after last week, we all felt good. Make no mistake. We felt good because they beat the Pittsburgh Steelers and they found a way to get it done. And, there was a lot of good to come out of that. But now all of a sudden they go to 7-4. Okay, there's no crime in that. But now you're at 7-4 and you've got some major, major questions. Some of them aren't their fault. I mean, you've got injury questions. And that's where I think the doubt's starting to creep in. Because, I mean, look, Myles Garrett is one of one. Denzel Ward is one of one. Yeah, there's depth. And Greg Newsome had a rough day, though. I mean, he did. But those guys you need on the football field. You also need Kevin Stefanski to come up with a better game plan. I just, I'm not saying disastrous. I'm not saying, oh, my God, fire the guy. Let me repeat that. I'm not saying, oh, my gosh, fire the guy before some of you crush me. Oh, does it always have to be firing Kevin Stefanski? Not at all. But there are weeks like last week where you take your hat off and go, that guy, he coached his ass off. He knew exactly what he was doing and playing it close to the vest because he knew he had a good feel for the way the game was going. Felt like he never had a good feel, certainly at the very beginning of that game, because it was like, okay, Denver, this is begging us to run the football, but I'm going to mix it up a little bit. I'm going to throw him a curveball, and we're going to start throwing it on. I don't know. I didn't see the need for that. All right, we will take a break. When we come back, we'll play a little fair or foul. There we go. Fair or Fortnite. And then top of the hour, Anthony Schlegel, the former Buckeye linebacker. Catch him, of course, with Bobby Carpenter each and every Sunday night at 8 o'clock. And, well, it was kind of doom and gloom. There is no getting around it. It's doom and gloom right now in Columbus. But we'll talk to Slags about what did happen on Saturday, what needs to happen moving forward for the Buckeyes as they fall to Michigan. So we'll talk to Slags coming up top of the hour. But Fair or Foul is next. Chico Borman Show. More to come on this Monday right here on the Big Play Sports Network. Alrighty, welcome back. Chico Borman Show on this Monday. Full disclosure, Bohm was lazy not getting in the transitions in the computer, but that's all right. I'll let it go, Bohm. Bohm all of a sudden is upset.
I don't have them. I don't.
What do you mean you don't have them? That's why on Friday, did I not say make sure you get those and they're in the system for today? Yes.
I mean, we have the fair or foul transition, but
that's all right.
I forgot about all the other ones.
That's all right, buddy. It's all right. Hey, it was such a good weekend. I'm on cloud 9 after those big wins. So, yeah, everything's good. All right. Without any further ado, we will have Schlegs coming up. Anthony Schlegel, former Buckeye linebacker, at 1. But right now it's time for another edition of Fair or Foul.
All right, Chico.
Yes, Bo.
Well, for today's edition of Fair or Foul, I'd like to lead things off with I want to ask you first off about that hit on DTR, because it seemed to be a little bit controversial in that a lot of people, football fans, seem to think that play that wound up getting him hurt shouldn't have been flagged.
Who? Denver fans?
Just in general. I saw it was like, should this have been a flag? And a lot of people were commenting like, that's absolutely not a flag. But you saw the defender like leave his feet.
Yeah. Launched. Yeah. That's one.
Yeah. And of course, like with Denver too, like you just had Kareem Jackson suspended.
Yeah.
It feels like this team is maybe a little bit dirty. Did you find that hit? Like, did you think it was fair or foul that hit was penalized?
Well, I thought it was definitely fair, and I'm being objective, honestly, when I say this. One, like you said, he launched, he left his feet, but where he hit him, like some people like to make the, he hit him right below the helmet. Well, okay, but if somebody launches themselves, right, and I'm not a physics major or anything, but if somebody launches themselves into you, or in this case into him, he's moving up. He's moving in an upward trajectory. So he launched, and maybe his intent was to hit, like, say, right here, and I'm pointing to my collarbone area. But as he extends and finishes the hit, he does end up hitting in the head and obviously, knocked him to tomorrow. So, yeah, it was absolutely, positively a dirty hit and should have been flagged, and it was.
I'm with you, Chico.
Thanks, Bo. Good to have you with me.
Yeah, it's gosh, it was so disappointing. Not disappointing, but it was just depressing to see like how many injuries ensued out in Denver. But anyways, another topic that I want to bring up with you in regards to this game that I saw drawing some criticism that I don't think I really agree with. So the Browns of late on short yardage situations, be it third or fourth down, have been going with Harrison Bryant, right? Like basically calling the shots at quarterback. Well, yesterday we saw that kind of blow up in their face for the first time when Harrison Bryant takes the snap and fumbles.
Yeah.
And I saw that receiving a lot of blowback on Stefanski, catching a lot of heat. And I think up to that point, there was it seemed kind of brilliant, right? But it's funny how things turn so quickly. And so with that, I want to ask you, like, is it fair or foul that the Browns should abandon that Harrison Bryant formation?
Abandon it? See, here's the thing. I don't know how much that's practiced during the week. It's kind of like that, the double reverse. Well, like how much is that practiced? How much game time do those guys have when they go to execute that play? To me, all that stuff goes into it. I didn't understand it. I mean, he's obviously not somebody who's used to getting the snap like that, and I don't care if he's your third or eighth or whatever string quarterback he is. Like, it's just I don't think there's a need to do that. I don't think you're the advantage to Harrison Bryant under center in that situation is so great that you're going to take your chances. I just don't think it's that great.
Yeah, Chico, I'm with you. Now,
Thanks.
I'm always with you, I guess.
I appreciate
apparently.
it.
Apparently. So I want to ask you about, I don't know if, did you happen to see Deontay Johnson in that Steelers matchup where there was like a live fumble?
Yeah, and he just kind of looked like he was disinterested because he
he's just
was
walking.
disinterested.
Yeah, he's just like, whatever. Oh, live ball. Cool. That's nice.
Yeah.
Fair or foul, do you think that wide receiver Deontay Johnson, Toledo alum, by the way, I must say, shout out to the Rockets. Fair or foul, Deontay Johnson needs to be disciplined for his actions?
Well, I mean, if he's disciplined, Tomlin obviously will keep it in-house. I'm kind of amazed, as much as we talk about, and I've said it myself, that Tomlin's been able to keep a lot of drama, and I'm even going back to the Big Ben days when it was Ben and Antonio Brown and all those guys, that he was really able to keep a lid on that stuff, even though those guys were, they were divas. But now you start to wonder, like, let's go through all of these damn wideouts. I mean, it's a laundry list. It's Antonio Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster, Chase Claypool, now Deontay Johnson. Like, how many of these George Pickens was griping about? Like,
Mike Williams?
I don't know. How many? I don't know. How many of these wide receivers, and I know it's a position that does kind of tend to have more than its fair share than other positions, but this seems like a trend that Mike Tomlin, I'm sure, would like to really, really nip in the bud.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that you bring that up, Chico, because it's like if Ohio State is wide receiver U, Pittsburgh is like diva receiver U of the NFL. Like, it's just so constant. It feels like a tradition out in Pittsburgh.
Recently, yes, Boom. I'm with you, Boom. That's I'm with you, Boom.
Appreciate you riding with me.
Sure, Boom. You're my ride or die guy.
Well, I want to get to the game. Obviously, not quite how we hoped it would end. No. I think we went into Saturday feeling pretty optimistic about things, and certainly quite a bit of disappointment. But with that said, there were a few plays that certainly left Ohio State fans like questioning things. One of them, namely, being so a receiver catches a pass from J.J. McCarthy, right? Great ball. J.J. had some absolutely elite tight window throws, by the way, which credit to him. We talked about it last week. I feel like this game was personal to him, and he definitely rose to the occasion. So he threw one touchdown where Denzel Burke seemed to pry the ball loose, right? And when the receiver landed on the ground in the end zone, Denzel basically swiped it away from him, right? It was ruled a touchdown. Now, the referee, analyst, whatever you want to call that title, Dean Blandino, said that he felt like this could very well be ruled an interception, but it's very close to call. There were a lot of close calls in this game, Chico. Do you think fair or foul that should have been ruled an interception?
Okay, I'm gonna go foul only because what you failed to, and I think it easily was. If it would have been ruled interception on the field, yes. But what Dean Blandino said was, if you remember, he said, I think that could very well be ruled an interception, but think about what was ruled on the field, and now you've got to have that, that evidence to overturn that. And he's like, I just don't think the evidence is there. Here's what I thought initially. And I did. I mean, it's very, very close. I think you can make a case either way. I wonder what would have happened if the ball landed, like, let's just say he knocked it out. He didn't grab it. He just knocked it to the ground. Would they have just said incomplete pass? Or would they have said, touchdown, he had control? Because I don't think they would have. I think it felt to me like he did not have full control. And I think if that pass, ironically enough, if that pass hits the ground at some point, meaning Denzel Burke knocks it out and just it lands in the end zone, I think we're talking about an entirely different thing. Maybe that's just me, but I thought you could have made a case for it. The pass itself was beautiful. It happened. It sucked. I mean, because maybe if it was ruled, like I said, if it was ruled an interception, then I think it's the other way, and you're having a hard time proving it. But because on the field they ruled touchdown, it's tough to get that overturned.
Yeah, there were a few calls, and I feel like I'm still going through the grief a little bit, like trying to rationalize things, and like if this call was just made the right way, like Xavier Johnson being spotted short and then it being ruled a 4th and 1, and the Buckeyes wind up punting. Special teams, by the way, the impact of special teams in that game is not talked about enough because Jesse Mirko was awful. Like, they were giving the Wolverines great field position. Meanwhile, Ohio State's getting pinned inside the 10, inside the 5 on numerous drives. Like, that was a huge factor.
Hang tight, but we're going to get into that with Schlegs coming up in the second hour because, like I said, I don't think Ryan Day should be fired. I think that's stupid. But are some decisions needing to be? Parker Fleming is their special teams coach, and this isn't a guy really that had any offers anywhere else. Ryan Day, instead of letting this year play out, gave him a 2-year extension. That was a bad game for their special teams. And I'm not just talking about, he missed a 52-yard field goal, and that's a whole nother issue. But yeah, you punted, you couldn't pin them deep. You also had a 12 men on the field. You had an illegal motion. It just sloppy at the end of the game. I mean, why are you trying to run that
That was so dumb.
Yeah. I mean, all you're doing then is eating seconds and you're not getting the yards. It just, those things, and that's coaching. I firmly believe that's coaching. So a guy like Parker Fleming, in my mind, Ryan Day probably needs to evaluate, but then at the same time, Parker Fleming's going, well, you just gave me a 2-year extension. I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot that needs to be reevaluated. And I think that was definitely, that decision to return the kick by Xavier Johnson at the end, that was definitely coaching. But, like, how far Jesse Mirko punts the ball, I don't know how much that's coaching. Because in the past, I feel like we've seen him be an effective punter. Be really good at, like, putting opposing offenses out on the field in tough positions.
Well, and what it does, too, real quick, just to add a little bit to this, it exacerbates the idea that, like, okay, that second possession, they don't go for it, but you can live with it if all of a sudden they're pinned back, inside their 5-yard line. But when Jesse Mirko isn't able to do that and they get the ball at the 25, it's like, okay, that was a net 25, 30 yards. It's like, no, go for it then. I mean, like, I have no problem if you're opting to punt, even though it's not, I don't think, who Ryan Day really is. Much more on that's really a big conversation right now. Is he doesn't coach like he normally does against Michigan, at least of late. But if you're gonna do that, you got to make sure that your punter is up to the task of pinning them deep in their own territory, and that didn't happen. So it's like, well, why didn't you just go for it? It's frustrating.
Last thing I want to ask you about this game. On today's edition of Fair or Foul, another questionable call that drew some blowback towards Ryan Day was at the end of the first half, right? So they go into their respective locker rooms at the score being 14-10 after Ohio State misses the field goal. Ryan Day runs down the clock before trotting out his kicker to attempt the longest field goal of his collegiate career. Now he hits the practice one before they ice him, and then he misses the kick. But I want to ask you, Chico, in general, do you think that decision to run out the clock and just settle for a career-long field goal attempt for your kicker was the right call? Do you think it was fair or foul?
Okay, I'm going to say foul, and I know it's a case where you can say, well, hindsight's purely 20/20, but again, I'm going to go back to Ryan Day. That doesn't feel like a call that Ryan Day even thinks twice about in any other situation. I mean, keep in mind also the situation like that got him there. Remember, because the series before for Michigan, that's when Sawyer and I think it was Sawyer and Mike Hall combined and got J.J. McCarthy to the ground, big sack. Then they punt, and because they do pin guys back, they were able to pin the Buckeyes back. But then the 44-yarder to Marvin Harrison. So, like, this is where, like, when you have momentum, this is where it seems like Ryan Day's feel for the game isn't there when it's, pardon the game. Like, you had a lot of momentum, not only from the defensive stop you made previously against Michigan with Hall and Sawyer on J.J. McCarthy, but then you have a 44-yarder to Marvin Harrison. You know, that's okay. We've got it. We've kind of got them on their heels. Let's keep going. But not only does he opt for that, it's like he let 37 seconds tick off the clock while he's trying to figure out what he wanted to do. It's almost like he wasn't prepared to be in that situation. 37 seconds is a lot of time. Call a timeout, get your best fourth down play, and if you don't make it, then okay, you don't make it. But I can live with that more so than I can live with, well, you know, we let the clock tick down, and then all of a sudden I just decided 52-yarder, you know, if he makes it, great. If he doesn't, no big deal. No, it was a big deal because, again, you had some momentum going into that, and you just completely let it go away. I don't know.
By the way, speaking of field goals, I don't know if you saw the ending of that Houston Texans game. I was
I did not.
Oh, okay. C.J. Stroud had an opportunity, so it was 24-21. C.J. Stroud took him down the field, right? Got him in field goal range, then took a tough sack, then a short pass to get them back in field goal range, because it was like a 56-yarder, and the kicker, this guy who they brought in a couple weeks ago after their original kicker going into the season got hurt, it bounces off the front of the upright and misses. So it would have sent it to OT. Tough ending.
Well, you really had a rough weekend.
It was bad.
Yeah.
I mean, C.J. Stroud overall had a great game. I hope he still keeps his head up, but yeah.
Were you at least able to put together any good TikToks?
I did make a couple this weekend.
Good.
Actually.
Good.
Yeah, now that you mention it. So.
Yeah.
It's a nice outlet. But anyways, turns out I lied, Chico. I do have one more question pertaining to the game.
That's okay.
Because wide receiver Roman Wilson of the Wolverines had some interesting comments after the game. Now, mind you, Wilson had like 30-something receiving yards. I just want to put that out there first. But toughness and physicality are things that have been brought up a lot in regards to this rivalry, and where a lot of people seem to place U of M's biggest advantage over Ohio State in that degree of toughness. So Wilson was asked about it, right? And he said, quote, they want to put on the Louis Vuitton, the $1,000 outfit, and you want to act hard. But when we're out there, they're not hard. I see the film. You're not tough. How do I put this, Chico? Do you find his comments fair or foul?
How do I put this? Is it fair or foul? Well, you really had to think about that one, Boom.
I could say more, but
I honestly, I'm going to say foul only because I think he's referring to Marvin Harrison. And because Marv does, I think he carries a Louis bag. I mean, now they all do. I mean, there's money, whatever. But Marvin, here's the thing about Marv. Like, he is physical. He is a guy, and all those receivers. Like, when you talk about guys that are blocking downfield, and the Ohio State receivers will do that. They do that. So, as far as I watch the tape and stuff like that, I don't know. I mean, look, there were a lot of emotions going into this. I don't think what Roman Wilson said was – I just think as it relates to Marv specifically, maybe not the guy you want to pick on, but he's probably not wrong when he talks about the Louis. It's like watching my boy Dustin Fox come into work every day. I had to get that in there. Dustin knows I love him.
Shout out D Fox.
Shout out D Fox, absolutely.
You mentioned Marv, and now that you mention that, I do want to ask Chico, because he did say that he was uncertain whether he'd return or go pro. Now, it feels like if he were to go pro, he would be a top overall pick. I mean, just looking at this from an objective standpoint. Yeah, like if there's ever a receiver worthy of being number one, it's probably someone of his caliber. You don't see that kind of talent come around every day. With that said, Chico, do you think from an objective perspective it would be fair or foul for Marvin Harrison Jr. to return to The Ohio State University?
Totally foul. I mean, you appreciate it because, again, there's that competitive fire, which he has, and it's one of the reasons, in addition to crazy talent, that he's going to be great, that he's going to be successful at the next level. I also think a lot of this, as we talk about it, even some 2 days later, there's still a lot of emotion, right? I mean, think about the guys, and this is, man, I can't believe I'm even saying this, but think about the guys that left, that lost that game, that won't have a chance. I mentioned this on Friday, that if they didn't win, guys that wouldn't get gold pants. Marvin Harrison's one of them. I mean, that's pretty amazing when you think about it. Travion Henderson won't. He's probably gone. So, I mean, you're talking about a group of guys. And I do think those mean something to those guys, but I think if you're Marvin Harrison and you're talking about, really breaking it down, which I'm sure Coach Day and Hartline and all those guys are going to talk to him, don't risk that. I don't want to see him risk that. He's too great of a talent, too great of a kid. You want him to, go to the next level and get paid. Now, if he absolutely says, you know what, I hate Michigan so much, I got to get this one, and I'm not going until I get this win, then God bless him. But I think cooler heads will prevail, and he'll probably talk to his pops a little bit as well, who will set him straight. So,
I still think that's maybe one of my biggest regrets from this season, just how everything played out, was like, you didn't use Maserati Mav. You didn't use him enough. Like, this is the best player in college football. It just feels like he was so deserving of more opportunities.
I don't think it was egregious as, say, like Michael Thomas, but you could have done more. I think part of that is, too, though, you went through the growing pains with Kyle McCord. And even at the end result of Kyle McCord was not a guy that was, going to be able to just – I mean, it's not like his stats weren't fantastic, but could they have been so much better with a better quarterback, and at the very least, a better quarterback at the beginning of the year, more experienced? Sure, absolutely.
The other thing that kind of breaks my heart with Marvin Harrison Jr., sort of, I guess –
this is when you start getting emotional here, Bohm, I know.
I mean, the opportunity to play in a Big Ten championship in the home stadium of where his father played and made a name for himself, I think that was something that would have been really special for him, and I feel like that would have been a historic performance. Just like, it's something that I feel like we deserve. That he deserves. All of us, the world.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been a nice sentiment considering Pops played pretty well and had some pretty good games there with Peyton Manning. But yeah, I would say at the end of the day, when all is said and done, and again, there's a lot of emotion right now, but when this thing clears and he sits down with his pops, with Ryan Day, with Brian Hartline, I think he ends up making the decision to enter the NFL draft, which is probably the right thing. All right, I'll tell you what, we'll take a quick break, quick 60-second break. When we come back, Anthony Schlegel. Schlegs, you don't want to miss this. We'll get his thoughts. Obviously, you see them each and every Sunday night at 8 o'clock. Bobby Carpenter Show with Anthony Schlegel, breaking it all down. And, man, there's plenty to break down from this one and moving forward. So Schlegs is next. Chico Borman Show. More to come right here on the Big Play Sports Network. Alrighty, welcome back, Chico Borman Show, as we roll through it on this Monday. And as I said to start the show, remember how warm and fuzzy everybody felt on Friday, right? You had Thanksgiving, and you're like, oh, I'm grateful for my family, and I was able to, enjoy time with them. But then all of a sudden, you had a football game on Saturday. Browns fans had one on Sunday, and now they're back to old Mr. Grinch. But this guy will put us in a good mood, guaranteed. Anthony Schlegel, former linebacker, and you catch him each and every Sunday at 8 here on the Big Play Sports Network. He accompanies Bobby Carpenter with the Buckeye Show. Schlegs, it's great to have you, buddy. Let me start with this, and we'll be general. Take the temperature of the town in Columbus. Have they settled down a bit? Are there still pitchforks coming for Ryan Day? Where are we at, bud?
Well, I mean, it's the loud minority of people, and they're upset about the loss, right? As you should be. I mean, you've lost 3 in a row. You had the COVID year, didn't play that one, probably win that one, right? So you're 2-3, but he's 1-3 versus them. And I don't necessarily think that people kind of like understand the grand scheme of things, right? When you come after like, hey, we got to fire this coach, like the thing is this, like, you got to press pause. You got to understand, first off, Gene Smith's in his last year, right? He's retiring this summer. Nobody's going to let go of a coach and then bring somebody in when they haven't brought in the next athletic director. So that's already a fact. 2, if you go look at, the similarities between himself and Urban, right? I mean, the one thing that Ryan has done is that he's beaten everybody in the Big Ten that he should beat. The last 3 years, we didn't get it done versus Michigan. There's things that have to change 100%. He's got to do that. But you don't have the Iowa loss that you had under Urban. You don't have the Purdue loss. And those are huge losses, right? Urban won 3 Big Ten titles. Ryan has won 2. So, and he's done it in 5 years. He's 56-7. And I'm like looking at myself like, who are you going to get? But I do know this. Things have to change. Things will change. If not, then that's a different discussion. But that's kind of where I see it. And here's the deal. In that game, when talent is equated, fundamentals and execution wins. We got out and executed. There were plays where it was literally filling the gap, a little hesitant, that it should have been a tackle in the phone booth. Well, then it was a tackle in open field. That's a touchdown. On the play, they're playing man coverage. The one that Burke had, the one where, was it questionable? 100%. But it's a touchdown nonetheless. If you just pack it back, that's a pick, right? You have the PI call on 3rd down on that long drive that continued the drive. That wasn't necessarily called. There's a lot of things in there, but ultimately it came down to we didn't execute, and they did. We turned the ball over. They didn't. And consequently, that's why they won the game.
Yeah, and I think it's important to point out, and you're kind of saying as much yourself, that first of all, this was a great football game.
A phenomenal football game, man.
Yes.
Phenomenal.
Yes, and I think perspective, and I get it. I mean, I was there in the 90s when Coop, every year. But I always said to myself, you know what? I loved Coop because Coop did so much good. Still to this day, you see it. Had done so much good for the Ohio State program. But eventually, and again, that word eventually is important, okay, you had to let him go. You had to say enough's enough. And I think with Ryan Day, like you said, okay, you got to have a plan. Like, this is not just, damn it, he's out of here, and Kyle McCord, we're, getting the transfer portal. Like, it doesn't work that way. Right. I look at this game and I say that, the last 2 years when they lost, those were ugly losses. And this year, let's face it, this one meant more than I think one meant in a long time because of all of the off the field stuff. But in the end, like you said, Michigan got it done. I agree with you that things have to change. And I guess I would start with, the coaching staff. Are there some areas, and I'm not asking to put you on the spot here and get in a bad situation with anybody, but are there some guys on that staff or some areas that might need to be, reevaluated?
Well, I think, and I discuss this as how I go about going to program, right? You evaluate, you assess, you train, right? Like that's the thing. The evaluation process, there's a lot of things that go into that, right? But they're objective, they're standards, and it's judgmental. Like that's on you to go figure what those areas are. Now, that's holistic though. Is it personnel? Is it coaching? Is it the recruiting process? Are we bringing people in that have a really high football acumen? Or are they more developmental because we have to take 5-star guys to have those type of recruiting classes? There's a lot of variables that go into that evaluation process. Then it goes into the assessment, right? So once I've done that, now it's like, where are we going and who's available to meet those needs? And then now moving into 24, what do we have to do to elevate us as a team, whether that's in our offseason program, which Mick is phenomenal at. Okay, so, and I've heard even chirps about like the strength and conditioning program. Absolutely not, man. First off, people don't realize strength and conditioning, it is maximizing the individual so that they can perform their skill. Because there's a lot of people that play like Tarzan or lift like Tarzan and play like Jane. That's not what it does. Like you're supposed to maximize the individual to go perform a skill and then also keep them healthy at the end of the year.
People are questioning, they're not questioning Marotti, are they?
Oh, I've heard it too, right? Everybody, but you know what though? Here's the thing though. In times like this, this is why when you're in the profession, you have to embrace it because everybody has a role to play and we all have to play our role. So there's needs, there's things to be evaluated. And you got to unequivocally say, yes, I put my stamp on this. This is the things that we did great. These are areas that we can improve. And then we, like Urban used to talk about, things that you need to improve, blow them up and go, things that you're good at, enhance and move forward. So I just kind of look at it that way. And here's the other thing too. I saw a lot of good in the game too.
Sure.
Like there was that one, and I get that I've heard this on Twitter recently, but Michigan's up. What are they up? 14-3. And Kyle goes down and goes 4 for 4 with 48 yards, scores 10-14 now. Then Ohio State 3 and out, gets a sack, Michael Hall, Jack Sawyer, and they punt the ball and it's inside. It's in the 3 yard. It's on the 3-yard line. And then we move the ball. There's 20-some seconds left. Michigan has timeouts. They run the clock down to kick a field goal. People are like, well, why didn't we go for it? Well, it's 4th and 2. So what? Let's go back. So what? You go 4th and 2? If you don't get it, you get no points. You give the ball back to Michigan. They'll probably sit on it. But if you go for it right then, they have 2 timeouts. They can try to move it down to get another field goal. Now they're up 7, right? Or you trust your kicker because let's not kid ourselves. Their kicker made a field goal of 50 yards.
Right.
So we're going to trust our kicker. We're going to run it down. We're going to make it the last play of the half and go in now down 1 with a little bit of momentum because we just scored. We just 3 and out him. We move the ball from the 3 because when you get the ball backed up like that, the percentages of you actually scoring, that's why it's a bonus because they did a great job. So I thought it was the absolute right call. And they were like, well, that's a scared call. No, I think it's just the right call at the time.
Okay.
So
go ahead, Slicks. I'm sorry.
No, so I'm just like, there was a lot of good, man. There was a lot of guys playing really hard, but I just think it just came down to where we didn't execute. But back to your question, are there areas? I mean, if you go look at the things, right, that we have to talk about, you lost 3 starters last year that are playing in the NFL at a high level on the offensive line. There's a question there. Did they come together? Was our running game like it should be? Okay. No. So we're going to evaluate that. D-line pressures. Did they have the sacks? Like it's 2 years in a row. We really haven't had a lot of sacks, right? Like is Larry in question? And it's not him, it's also personnel. So there's all these different special teams this year. That has to come into consideration.
And he just got a 2-year extension, Parker Fleming.
Right. So all of those areas, but again, that's just because you have an extension doesn't mean you can't be evaluated.
Yeah,
and the standard
totally
is the
agree.
standard, right?
Exactly.
So that's kind of, and I say all this because this is where the hard decisions, the hard convos have to come into play in the evaluation process. The only person that can do it is Ryan. And it's got to be evaluated on what you see on film because what we see as a fan necessarily isn't what they see on film because there are certain calls that they have, there's certain schemes that they have, and guys might have done it, so but again, that's why they're the coaches. They get paid those dollars, but something does have to occur.
Anthony Schlegel joining us. Schlegs, I want to get to the on the defensive side of the ball and linebackers in particular, obviously right in your wheelhouse. But you brought up you brought up a very interesting, and I think it's really being talked about a lot today in Columbus and has over the weekend about that field goal. And I'll play devil's advocate here because at first I didn't really have a problem with it, but then let's go back to the sequence of events to let up to that. Sawyer and Mike Hall Jr. converge. They get a big sack. Then they pin you back. But then 44 yards to Marvin Harrison. It felt like then you had Michigan on their heels, right? Like, okay, we just got a quick strike. Marv's involved. And that's where I think some folks are saying Ryan Day against any other team would probably put the pedal to the metal, and he would make that aggressive call, or at the very least wouldn't wait 37 seconds and let that time come off the clock. Is there something in terms of the feel and the flow of the game going, you know what? Yeah, we just hit a big play. Let's kind of go for the jugular if we can.
Yeah, I would say that would go back to what transpired on first, second, and third down prior to the fourth down. And I think that's what, and again, I don't remember, my notes are pretty extensive, and I'll just say on that one, let's see where it went. All right. Great catch by Fleming on third down, backed up. Remember that? Like he rolled out.
Yep.
To his right. And why did they do that, right? He's backed up in the end zone. There's not going to be a penalty call for holding to potentially get a safety. So they roll him out of the pocket because it's a lot easier not to get a holding call there, right? So he rolls out. Fleming catches it. Great pass and catch to Marvin. First down, right? And then what transpired on the other three, I really don't remember because they're not necessarily in the notes because I'm like, all right, so what's going on? But then you come down, and I believe it was 27 seconds. I don't think it was that long.
Okay.
But I would go back and say what transpired on the first, second, and third downs, because the best play that we have in the playbook is number 18.
Right.
You know what I mean? I remember in 2021 or 22, I took my daughter to the game for her birthday, and I'm just sitting there with the fans, like listening and throw it tomorrow. I'm like, you know what? That's a fantastic play call. I totally understand why you guys would say that, because they can't cover the dude, right? He's the best player in college football. Probably not going to win it, but he's unbelievably talented. I trust that matchup, so go get it done. So I don't really actually recall the three plays that transpired to go 4th and 2, but I think that's where you would go back and look at, was he ultra aggressive in those to lead up to that 4th and 2? So, I just think it's one of those deals where, as a coach, and they're like, well, why is being backed up? The percentages of being where you are, it's almost like you're stealing points because you should never have gotten there in the first place.
Fair.
So being able to go in and having confidence in your kicker, again, we see things that, he's probably hit him before in practice and it's good, and I trust him and I want to give him some ownership. And, he hit the practice one, he didn't hit the game one. So, you could catch it. And I think that's where people are like, well, why aren't you ultra aggressive to try to go win it? And you know what? Hey, guess what? I can honestly see your opinion. I'm not saying that it's wrong. I'm saying that I know why he did it, and I articulated why he did. But I also understand the sentiment as to, let's freaking go for it and see. But then if you do go for it, what are you gaining out of it? I think that would be the next thing.
All right, let's go to your bread. Let's go to your bread and butter here on the defensive side of the ball, because I have been, first of all, I remember last year, everybody loved Jim Knowles, and then the Michigan game came, and and it was bad, but it was like, wait a minute, don't forget all that praise that you were heaping on this guy. I know it's all about beating Michigan. So then fast forward to this year, and it was those explosive plays, forget about them. They're not going to happen. And they didn't happen. And they had one of the best defenses in the country, and clearly you could see improvement. And more than anything, and you would get this, it felt like Jim Knowles and his guys on defense were one. Like he had a good feel when to even run blitzes were like working and sometimes those are hit or miss. Seemed like every run blitz he called this year he hit on. So when you look at this game, okay, Michigan ran when they needed to run the ball and eat clock, they were able to do that. One thing that I thought was interesting at the linebacker position, and this is where, like I said, I'd love to get your opinion on. So you seem to see open receivers when they're in that zone. They're playing that zone coverage on defense, and receivers, whether it be Colston, Loveland, among others, are open. Is that a scheme thing? Is that a personnel thing? Like, why was that? Because it seemed to be an issue in this game, particularly in the second half.
Well, Loveland was the one that tied in, right?
Yeah,
So he did damage. He had 88 yards on it. The wide receivers didn't do crap, but then they talked the most shit. But that's what happened. So, but like Loveland was an issue there. I mean, honestly, kudos to them. I mean, Michigan won on fourth down, but how do you win on fourth down? You win on first and second and third down. And that's where I've discussed too. Part of the football acumen is not, we got to stop them here on third down. No. It's the second down play is really the one, because it was first or second and 8. Like that was the one. Then they got 5. Then they got 2. Now it's 4th and 1, right? The series should have been won on the second down, right? Because once you get them in the 3rd and 6 plus, 70% of the playbook's out the window. And then they threw that one to Loveland on the side on a 4th down. Great. It's eye control, right? That's just execution. The guy was right there. He's actually lined up inside, peeking in the backfield. It's not your job. Your job is that guy, right? So part of it is execution. And then in your zone, there was one of Loveland over the middle. That's a pack it back thing. In times throughout the year, we played zone tremendous. And in this game, they scored 30, so they scored 23, really, because they gave him the ball. You still give it to him, but, that early pick put us behind the 8 ball. So some of those things, yes, it's just, doing your job in the zone and trying to keep everything in front of you and allow for your offense and the weapons to be able to go win you the game, as opposed to the flip side, whereas previous years, it was always the offense having to try to go win those games. Well, let's face it, guys. This has been the best defense Ohio State's had in the last 5 years for sure.
Easy.
I mean, the growth. I mean, coming into this game, guys, they've only allowed 3 rushing touchdowns and seven passing touchdowns, 10 all season. So was this their best game? The answer was no. They were late on some fits. That hurt. Even on those 4th downs, there were some ones where it could have been stopped. It was just a little bit of the timing, a little bit of the hesitation, and they didn't get it done. And when it's all equated, those plays matter. And this was the first game. Notre Dame game, you had it. The Penn State game, you had it. There were plays in those games defensively we made that really turned the tide and the momentum back to Ohio State. We didn't have really any of those in this game. A 4th down stop, a really good 3rd down sack to flip the field position, to hold them back where they were. All of our drives were long drives, right? They seem to have the field position, and that goes back into the special team aspect as well, punting.
Yeah.
So I think it all plays into it, if that makes sense to you.
Go ahead.
No, that's it.
As you're watching that last drive by Michigan unfold, because again, we go back to Jim Knowles and what he really worked hard, and they worked hard on in the offseason to avoid those explosive plays. They weren't going to sell out. They weren't going to gamble. Did you, watching that drive unfold, did you at any point say, all right, buddy, we're going to have to sell out a little bit here. We're going to have to take a chance here? Like, was there a part of you that wanted them to take some gambles there late so they couldn't run the ball and obviously eat that clock?
Well, here's the thing. You're down 24-27. Touchdown takes you out the game. Field goal keeps you in it, right? Field goal, it's 30-24 with a chance to score and win by an extra point, right? So what's the risk reward of it? You got to give the ball back with some time on the clock. They had a minute 5. Why did he try to take it out, right? Fair catch it. You're already down there. Get the ball on the 25-yard line. We saw that transpire in the Notre Dame game. 1:20 left on the clock. So I'm with you. There were times I was like, man, do we really need to do something? But then we also saw earlier in the half. Now, again, it was a different quarterback that came in that ran a run, but that's like when you sell out and you go true man and guys' backs are turned, that's where the quarterback can beat you and pick up a huge chunk. So it's kind of, again, not a D coordinator. I don't watch all the film that Michigan does, right? That the coaches do. I'm not going to fault it. I can see why people say we got to go be aggressive so we can get the ball back and give them some time without wasting some timeouts. Totally get it. Do I know when an appropriate call should have been called to bring the house? I don't. The 3rd and 6, 3rd and 5 offensive PI where he just ran into the guy, that was bumpy, because that would get you off the field. But still, next play is the most important, and you got to get it done on 1st and 2nd down. So that's what it really comes down to me. I could see why everybody says you got to take some risk and go do it. But if you go take that risk and it's also where you got to trust your players. But they did their job. They stopped them. You have a chance with 1:05 to have the ball to go win the game in the big house. And we just didn't get it done.
Have we been spoiled with the play of quarterbacks over the last few years that where Kyle McCord? Okay.
Yes.
I mean, and look, Kyle McCord, I think, knows better than anyone. I can't make that pick, early in the game and all of that. But I do think to some degree when you talk about Haskins, when you talk about Fields, when you talk about C.J. Stroud, of course, now doing it in the NFL, that it's like now all of a sudden we expect them to just, he better be an All-American and ready to be drafted in the top 5, and that wasn't McCord this year. So
no.
How do you think this thing plays out at the because, now you're hearing, is he going to transfer because they're going to go to Lincoln Keyholes? I mean, it's getting crazy right now.
Yeah. Yeah, people don't know. I mean, competition breeds excellence. If you want to be at Ohio State and compete and go win it and get better, you stay. If you don't, you leave. I mean, here's the thing, man. When I came to Ohio State, you had Bobby Carpenter, A.J. Hawk, and Mike D'Andrea, and John Kerr. Why are you going there? I'm like, I want to go be the best. Compete, man. That's what you want. You want a bunch of dudes that want to compete. So, it's different now with the portal. That's fine, man. If people want to leave. If you want to stay, go be great. So here's the thing. Kyle didn't play bad all year. He had some really good things. The thing that probably hurts, and you can even go back as far as JT Barrett, right? JT did what he did very well. But in this, I think it's when you look at the weapons that we have, and Cade really stepped up this year, and Emeka and Marvin and Fleming and, Trevion, and he was a little banged up, and then he's coming back, and, we've been spoiled. So what's going to transpire? Well, that's why you recruit. That's why there's competition. It's so different than the NFL. So what's going to happen? I don't know. But I do know this. You should have the best people possibly on your roster to compete so you have the best starting 11. And regardless of who that is, you got to be ready to go. So it's also why you got to develop. And I will say this. I mean, the secondary wise, like the growth in some of our position groups, right, has been phenomenal. Secondary, I thought, played very, very well all year. Wide receiver room played very, very well. Trevion played well. You have some gaps right now. And that goes back to the evaluation process that only Ryan can do. And, 2024 is going to look very, very different for the Buckeyes. So, it's just one of those things that you just wait to unfold.
So preface this by saying everyone's entitled to their own opinion. That said, though, what was your reaction to Maurice Clarett saying that, basically Ryan Day's got to go and that's it? And what'd you think?
Oh, I know Reese, man. He loves Ohio State. It's cool, man. People can say whatever they want to say. You know what I mean? That's why it's called the Twitter machine, or X, right? And so, I just look at it this way, First off, people forget. We talked about it a little bit earlier, but Gene's on his last year. Ryan's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So Gene's on his last year. They're not making a change at the head coaching position because they're going to leave that for the new athletic director to put his stamp on the program. 2, if you go look at Ryan has done, 5 seasons, he's 56-7. He's 1-3. COVID year, right? Didn't play the game. Would have been 2-3. You look at Urban's track record. Honestly, people forget about Urban's best year besides the Natty was 12, because we went 6-7, and the very next year we went 12-0 with the exact same guys. That was phenomenal. But he won 3 Big Tens. Ryan's won 2 in 5. He won 3 and 7. Now the difference is he was 7-0 versus them. So, and that's what the mark of being a Buckeye is, right? What you do against that team. So my thing is this, like, who are you going to get? I'm like, well, let's get Mike Vrabel. He's a dog. Yeah, he's absolutely a dog. Guess what? Mike ain't coming here. Yeah. Mike's a 17-year NFL vet, head football coach in the league. That's what Mike does. You know, Fick, I know Fick, man. Fick probably gave him his word. He probably has a huge buyout. He ain't coming. You know, who are you going to get that understands this right now? I'm just saying, like right now, especially with all the other circumstances and recruiting and all those things. Like, who are you going to get right now that you want to come fill this gap? Do you have enough trust that Ryan's going to make the things? And I thought he did a good job in 21. The defense was a wreck. We got to go make a switch. Boom, we make a switch. We bring in Knowles. He's really good throughout the year. Boom, 5 explosive plays. People forget we were winning 2017 at half in that game. But you can't have them because why? It's the game. So as I look at it, I say pump the brakes. The dude's 56-7. He doesn't lose to the bad teams that we've had in the past year that wreck seasons. He wins those games. Michigan right now is a very good football team.
Yes, they are. People forget that,
man. Like 2 versus 3 in the big house. And we had a chance to win at the end of the game. We didn't get it done. That's execution. So you got to go back and evaluate why. Was it just the game or was it holistically? And I think that's really more to Maurice's point in this. Do they understand? Because now going into 24, you're going to have 0 guys on the team to understand what it means to beat them. That's a big deal. So, and I will say that's one thing I thought that and I haven't been in the building. I'm not there, right? So I'm like, I don't know. Mm-hmm. I do know Mick. I do know what they do in the offseason, but that emphasis every single day was there for this. And so that's going to be like, do we emphasize it enough? Do they understand it enough? Are we getting the type of kids that I would say this, that have the people say chip? I would say in 2023, very different than I'm 42, right? But the ability just to flip the switch, like it's just, you mess with you flipped it. And like, it's just a completely different animal. Like that.
Yeah.
Are we getting those caliber of guys? And Maurice was one of those guys, right? He was a dog. He could flip the switch. So I think that when people evaluate a tweet like that, they got to also understand like where it's coming from, who it's coming by, and when they make it. And I think it's probably made in a little haste because you also have to take in holistically everything that is surrounding that type of decision.
Yeah, a lot of emotion and
no doubt. And guess what? It should be emotion because it's the game.
Yes,
I hate them.
Yes,
okay, I can't stand them. I know a lot of them. Their strength coach Ben Hermert is a phenomenal dude and a great strength coach. I hate him right now during this week, but guess what? He won the game, man. Congratulations. Third bucket, right?
I just think it's funny, just to wrap up with you, buddy, and I appreciate your time today, Anthony Schlegel joining us. I think it's funny because you mentioned Braves, and I've had 3 or 4 people say that to me, like, oh, you got to fire Ryan Day. And I'm like, well, okay, if you're going to fire somebody, and okay, fans deserve to be frustrated. That's their right, whatever.
100%.
But immediately I'm like, well, okay, well, what's the plan? They're like, well, obviously you bring Vrabel in. I'm like, oh, it's that. I feel like in a few good men.
He just wants to automatically leave the Titans, right? Now, again, they didn't win in the division last year, right? They're not going to the playoffs this year. Right? Like there's some things, but they ain't moving from Braves.
Nashville's Braves pretty nice. Yeah. And
you don't have to deal with NIL. You don't have to do the offseason. You got OTAs. Braves is a phenomenal coach, man. Like he is amazing.
Yeah.
Would he be awesome to have here? Yeah. But like, is he actually the choice for Ohio State? I'm going with Ryan Day. I want to see what happens, and I think Ryan does too. Right?
Yeah.
Like he's a ultra competitor. First off, great dude, does a lot, gives back, invests in the community. That's not what really matters. What really matters is winning the game, right? So take all those things aside. You've seen his offenses, and it's like the first year because your point earlier of the quarterback play of that caliber of guy, and we just thought that Kyle would come in. This is a different scenario. Though he's a first-year starter than what they're dealing with in Georgia when you got a redshirt freshman in Beck. But if you look at the young quarterbacks, people are like, well, we should have had Ewers. Guess what? Texas went 8-5 last year. That would never fly at Ohio State, right? You look at the Aller kid. he hasn't thrown the ball more than 7 yards down the field. You look at what Beck does. He averages like 7 yards, 6 yards an attempt. We're more like at 10. Why? They're protecting him because why? They have a running game. So when you're actually looking at all those things, it's like that's kind of where I think the evaluation process will be. But again, it's holistic. It's top down. It's the recruiting. It's the development. It's the personnel. It's the coaching staff. It's everything that you do. And guess what? If you don't do that, then it's not your place for you here. Because when you lose the game, that's what happens.
Is Harbaugh back next year for Michigan?
Ooh, great question. I have no clue. I ain't in that program. You know what? I mean, people talk about the Bears and stuff, and you know, it's going to come down to the NCAA, right?
It's tough to figure out.
It's hard. I would say this, man. Like, why I wanted all of this stuff to transpire after the season because it brought them all together, man. They just became tighter.
Yeah.
And I don't know what happened in the building. We've all seen the kind of evidence, and the Big Ten made their ruling, et cetera, et cetera. I personally want it to happen after, because in trials and tribulations like this, when you're dealing with 18 and 22-year-olds and even adults in the NFL, like you circle the wagons, right? And it's just us. And that kind of became their mantra. And they've been playing with that chip of us against everybody, right? Everyone, as they say. And, I was like, man, just leave this on the back burner. You know what I mean? But is he back? I don't know. I think it's going to come down to like what is actually on the table for them in terms of the NCAA and all the other findings. Because there's a lot. I don't want to get into it right now on the show because we're talking about the game, but there's a lot there.
Oh, yeah.
So it would not surprise me if he left, because the NFL doesn't give two craps what you do in college. They care about winning football games and divisions and going to the playoffs. So.
Yep. Yeah, we forget. I mean, there's a couple investigations going on still as we speak, so there's still a lot to be said there.
I mean, guys, guess what? He only coached 6 games this year. Sherrone Moore coached the first 3 and the last 3.
Can you make a case for Sherrone Moore as Big Ten Coach of the Year? And I'm honestly not being funny here.
No, I mean, the Broyles Award for the top assistant for sure. For sure. Because you had to bring him in.
6 games, and then when it mattered most, I mean, the guy was outstanding. At least got to garner some votes, I would think. I don't know. Schlegs, man, appreciate your time. Again, Anthony Schlegel joins Bobby Carpenter. You catch him every single week here on the the Big Play Sports Network. Sundays at 8 o'clock, wrapping up Ohio State. And go attack and dominate. I can see you're ready. You're always ready to go attack and dominate.
Ready. Gas station ready, man, always.
Schlegs, thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.
See you guys. Have a good one.
All right. That is Anthony Schlegel. Good stuff. He's outstanding. Absolutely outstanding. Yeah, interesting points there. I thought, I mean, there's always going to be 2 schools of thought, and that's what's, that's why you have these conversations. I agree with him that Ryan Day absolutely should be going nowhere. I didn't even think about the Gene Smith thing. By the way, did you see Gene Smith get into it with one of the staffers? As if they don't know who he is. Like, he's only been the AD forever. Like, you don't know, like, where's your credentials, sir? I'm the freaking athletic director. Like, well, you still need, shut up. I don't know. With Gene Smith going to, Ryan Day is going to be back, and he deserves to be back. Now, how will that staff look coming back? He mentioned special teams. I didn't bring up the 2-year extension because of thinking that he's safe. Just the opposite. Like, Parker Fleming, special teams the last couple of years haven't been good. I mean, last year, if you go to last year in the big game against Michigan, they also struggled, and they have struggled, which was why the extension for Parker Fleming in the offseason was a little bit questionable. Another guy that I think is coming under a little bit of fire is Corey Dennis, who's the quarterback's coach. Now, this is going to sound ridiculous because, again, it's 1 year with Kyle McCord and but there's another one. Like, how much time does Ryan Day have to devote to, bringing along a young quarterback like Kyle McCord? And if he can't, and obviously It lends you to believe that he can't have all that time because he's got to coach the entire football team and the obligations that go with it media-wise. Well, then hopefully your quarterback's coach, and I'm not saying that Corey Dennis isn't, but there have been questions the last couple of years. Corey Dennis is, I believe, Urban's son-in-law. I think Corey married one of Urban's daughters. So, and I'm not saying that's the only reason he's a coach. Please don't go there. But those are things that need to be evaluated. Hell, he even brought up Larry Johnson. Larry Johnson, to me, is untouchable. But when you look at, we've been talking about recruiting. They've been unable to close on some pretty big defensive linemen of late. And, if Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau, they exit, I don't know what that cupboard looks like. I mean, it's never going to be bad, but we're used to it just always being like 4 and 5 star guys. They've missed out on a few of those guys. And, yeah, I know you immediately just say, well, that's Ryan Day, right? He's part of it, but specifically with those positions or that position, that's Larry Johnson. Larry Johnson's been around a long time. And, look, Larry Johnson's contributed as much as anyone to the greatness of Ohio State. And I'm not saying that he can't coach I'm just saying from a recruiting standpoint, the reality is when guys like Tuimoloau and Sawyer are gone, who's filling those shoes? Those are legitimate questions right now.
The other thing with Tuimoloau and Sawyer, I really expected more from them. And I think we've seen some signs of growth from them throughout the season. Jack Sawyer especially has really come along. But like in this game on Saturday, they seemed relatively ineffective. And part of that is credit to J.J. McCarthy. He got the ball out quickly. He was able to avoid rush for the most part. But I think I came into this season expecting them to be the next Bosa and Chase Young. And they just weren't. Like it was when you hoped that they could step up and make a play. Sometimes they did, but it wasn't enough, especially from what you expect out of this program, out of that position, out of Larry Johnson underling, someone who under his tutelage.
Yeah.
And I think I'm hopeful that next year we can see some sort of bounce back. You got guys like Kenyatta Jackson who are going to be filling in those shoes, and we've heard like that there's promise with them, but it doesn't feel like they have the next Bosa right now, the guy who's going to command a presence and become known as one of the most feared defenders in college football.
Yeah.
And that's something that I am concerned about. Now, on the interior, I like what they have on the interior of the defensive line. I don't know if a guy like Tyleik Williams is going to go pro or Michael Hall, but I think that you can at least see the dominance in more regards there.
Those guys have been the jump that they made this year was extremely impressive from the beginning of the season. And again, that's where Larry Johnson is one of the best defensive line coaches, maybe the best in college football. I mean, again, when you talk to, the Nick Bosas and the Joey Bosas, the Chase Youngs, and one of the things he emphasizes is getting leverage with your hands. I mean, there's so many different other things, but I know they say that's where he specializes. The one thing that Schlegel said there, and I wholeheartedly agree with him, one, Ryan Day is going nowhere, and he shouldn't be going anywhere. Okay, you're telling me a record of 1-3 warrants him being fired. Well, you're not in touch with reality. Okay, if there were other things going on, we're talking about a guy that's embarrassing the program, kind of like Jim Harbaugh, then we might be having this discussion. But we can't just forget, and I know people hate to admit this, Michigan's got a very good football team. That was a great football game. They are a great football team. Now, I don't expect people to sleep better at night, but I think you have to be able to respect what they bring to the table. This is no longer the Rich Rod Michigan years. This is no longer Brady Hoke, where they're a joke and they have no idea. No, I mean, it took some time. And again, Jim Harbaugh, it wasn't that long ago. Harbaugh was the one on this. Urban Meyer? I think Urban Meyer basically broke him, and to the point where you're gonna have to take a pay cut and blah 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 blah. He was ready to go to Minnesota. So these things happen in the rivalry. And I'm not saying that, oh, well, it's okay to lose to Michigan. It's not. But, man, and one thing I hate from some of you youngsters out there, I hear this one quite a bit. Well, we got standards now at Ohio State. Oh, like when I was there in the 90s, they didn't have standards. Like they weren't like they weren't top 1, top 2, top 3 program in the country. No, and yes, after a certain point, John Cooper had to go. But John Cooper, you knew John Cooper ran a relatively clean program, and he's really responsible for putting recruiting across the country, not just in Ohio, on the map. I mean, you're talking about guys coming from Florida, whether it's Belisari, you're talking about, the David Bostons of the world, Sean Springs, you're talking about all sort of different guys that were, they were all over the country. A lot of that had to do with John Cooper. So he would bring in the best talent. They would win a lot of games, but ultimately, yes. And I say ultimately because that means to me, after a while, so many years, 2-10-1. I mean, but they gave him 13 years. You can't tell me after 4 seasons it's time to fire Ryan Day. Like, he didn't lose to a bad football team. Are there things that need to be addressed? Sure. But don't give me this, BS about, oh, well, now there's standards at Ohio State. Shut up. I mean, that's so ridiculous. That's unacceptable. Well, you're going to lose some games. And granted, it's the game, and you can't be losing that game. And next year, if he loses it, yeah, they're going to, okay, now it's going to get really hot because now you're talking 4 in a row. I don't think that's going to happen. Maybe, maybe not. But as of right now, that's stupid. What is your plan if you're going to do that? It's kind of like when last year with the Cavaliers. Remember, I took all kinds of heat, Bohm, when I was hearing it right and left about J.B. Bickerstaff had to go. He can't take this team any further than he already has. And Donovan Mitchell, oh my God, get rid of him. Playing golf with Allen Houston, get him out of like in the moment, emotion takes over, and that's part of being a fan. But in this case, we got to chill out a little bit. Ryan Day has some really tough decisions to make. They've got to evaluate everything, and I think they will. I'm confident they will. And I'm not happy about this. Don't get me wrong. I'm pissed off. I'm bummed out. Boom, all last week, I had never looked forward to a game like I looked forward to that one on Saturday. But they played a great team. It was a great game, and they didn't come out on top. That does not mean Ryan Day loses his job. That's stupid.
The overreaction was, it happened from Kyle McCord's first incompletion to Emeka Ibuka, where he dropped that pass on 3rd and short. And I already saw tweets of, oh, this is over. That's the turning point. And it was just nonstop snowballing from there, right? After his first INT.
Now that INT was...
It was really bad.
It was horrible.
But it was the first quarter. To say that the game is over after that...
No, but here's what I would say, though. Here's what I would say. You don't say it's over, but you knew going into that game that there are certain plays, which is why you constantly say, well, you can't turn the ball over. And you say that every week against any opponent. But in games like that, it's really, really important, and certainly not one where you give them 10 yards and they're in the end zone. So I understood the significance of that. No, there was still plenty of football to be played, but that totally changed the complexion of the game. And, those are the things that when you play an important game like that, an opponent like that, that's what's going to happen when you make a mistake like he made.
One name you didn't toss out the Schlags that our colleague Nick Padone tweeted out. He, I don't know if you saw it this weekend. He tweeted out a picture after the game of Deion Sanders decked out in OSU gear.
Yeah, that sounds like
let's get prime.
Sounds like something Padone would do.
Give me my theme music.
Yep. No. So anyway, like I said, I understand people are upset. I understand it. I understand the initial frustration of got to get rid of Ryan Day. Hopefully, after a few hours, people are like, okay, that's not the answer. But he needs to figure things out and fast. Yes, you can't lose 3 in a row, but let's not pretend that like this is Rich Rodriguez and the Michigan Wolverines. It's Jim Harbaugh. They are playing at a very high level, and there's this isn't a guy that has embarrassed the program. If we're talking about investigations on top of this, okay, you're having that discussion. But I just, man, please do not. And I've already gotten them already from a few of you on Twitter, which I've made a point to stay off of until today, about, we have the standards and, now you think losing to Michigan's okay? Yeah, that's it. You got me. Like, I'm just totally okay losing to Michigan. No. But I also have, I would hope, a little common sense, a little bit of logic here.
And I think a lot of fans right now, Ohio State fans, are just groaning at the thought of a year 2 of Kyle McCord. But we have every reason to expect that if Kyle McCord were named the starter next year, like, it's only going to be improvement from this year. Having that extra experience under your belt goes a very long way.
Yeah, but how much? I mean, that's a key question. Like,
can he take that leap?
Kyle McCord might not be he might just be average, and that's where people with Ohio State, fans of Ohio State, will say, well, average isn't good enough. I can't disagree with that, because I know the standards have been raised, but I also think it's a little ridiculous to say, well, Ryan, because then here's the other thing. I saw this earlier too. Guys that Ryan Day could have had instead of, a lot of work went into this one, ahead of Kyle McCord. And it was Drew Aller. Schleg's mentioned a couple. Drew Aller hasn't been, now, I don't know.
Finally
James
threw
Franklin,
a deep ball last week. How about that?
They don't even allow him to throw the ball down the field. And that's not any knock on Drew Aller, but I don't know any more about Drew Aller than anybody else does, because he hasn't shown anything. J.J. McCarthy, it's well documented, wanted to be an Ohio State Buckeye, and he already chose. Well, okay, Quinn Ewers, there were numbers there. I mean, those things happen. But, like, then also on this list, Caleb Williams. Like, okay, well, why don't we just get the top court? Drake May was on. Could have had Drake. Of course he could have. I mean, it was an open process, but let's not pretend that, like, everybody was clamoring and saying that Kyle McCord was going to be bad. He's got to be much better, and honestly, Bohm, I don't know how much better he will be. He might be just an average to okay quarterback. I know you want to believe he's elite, but he might not be elite.
And you could very well be right. But I like to believe in Ryan Day's recruiting process, and the fact that he chose him and, like, literally kind of stopped recruiting J.J. McCarthy in favor of him. It has to speak to some sort of special talent.
Probably didn't hurt that Marvin Harrison.
Yeah, true. That's a good point. Touche. I do find it funny, though, that a lot of Ohio State fans right now are buying the most stock in a quarterback that's not even on the roster yet, in Aaron Noland, a commitment guy who I don't know if you saw
Aaron
his
Noland
tweet.
And Keen Holes more than I've heard. Yeah,
I don't know if you saw his tweet, but he was like, basically like, in January, watch out, because he's going to enroll early. So let's invest all of our hopes and dreams into this true freshman over Kyle McCord.
Well, and hopefully Ryan Day will be able to coach him.
Hopefully.
The Vrabel thing just cracks me up. It honest to God. Now, if all of a sudden it was out there, don't get me wrong, like Vrabel, absolutely, this is his lifelong dream. He wants to come back. He wants to coach. Then, yeah. But, guys, like, not everybody, even if you played at Ohio State, you grew up in Ohio, and Vrabel's as decorated an Ohio State Buckeye as you can have. Some guys don't want to go to a situation where, like, it's 24/7, and if they so much as breathe the wrong way, fans are going to be pissed and call for he might not be up for that. He's got a pretty good gig in the NFL. I know it's Tennessee Titans. People say, well, it's not. It's an NFL head coaching job. And by the way, Nashville's a pretty nice city to live in. I'm sure he's pretty happy there. But like I said, I think it's just funny when people say, well, you got to fire him. Okay, well, what are you going to do? What's the plan? Well, Vrabel. Oh, have you already talked to him? Well, no, but I'm sure he'd want to come. Don't be so sure of that. That's not necessarily the answer all the time.
Chico and Vrabel, you're talking about a guy who said in a press conference that he would, like, cut off his testicles for a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
You think he would give up that pursuit just to go back to college?
Cut off his testicles? Probably not.
You know what I mean.
Look, I think there was a time when he would have, but like now, I don't think it makes a whole lot of sense. Okay. And sometimes, especially now, things have changed in the landscape of college football with NIL, and some are cut out for that, some aren't cut out for that. So, anyway. All right. In closing, folks, if you need bet credits for football season, the Big Play Network is presented by Tipico Sportsbook. Tipico Sportsbook app has your traditional bets like the money line, spread, and point totals, but you can also lock in player props and check out our Big Play Boost every single week to back your favorite Cleveland teams and athletes with the best odds in Ohio. Get in the action. Load up for football season using the promo code BIGPLAY100. You will get $100 of bet credits on us plus a $30 dog pound bet. Bet with the Big Play crew all season long with Tipico Sportsbook. Well, do we have, by the way, before we get out of here, do we have any late breaking information on Myles Garrett? Or I was busy talking to Schlegs there. My guess is they may be waiting until they get to LA to get that MRI done on Myles Garrett. I have not seen anything other than they're awaiting. He has to get the MRI first, and then they're awaiting those results. So
I haven't seen anything, but I imagine we'll see some kind of MRI update. I'm sure it's not something that they're going to want to waste time on. I mean, they're in LA now. They went last night from Denver. It's not a very long flight. I'm sure.
Thanks,
I have to
Are
imagine.
you the air traffic controller?
Well, I know that was the plan. Maybe they had a hang up.
Right. Well, obviously, we'll see what happens there. Everybody's holding their breath because, he's pretty darn important. Tomorrow on the show, it's Tuesday. That means the Bold Bald Breakdown. Myself and Nick Shook talking about a tough loss to the Denver Broncos on the road and possible injuries. We hope Myles is okay. We hope Denzel is back soon. And we're also thinking that it could be Joe Flacco at quarterback against the Rams. But all of that we will discuss tomorrow when we come on the air at noon, from noon to 2, right here on the Big Play Sports Network. My thanks to Michael Bohm, also Anthony Schlegel, and again, Catch Schlegs, along with Bobby Carpenter. Those two are outstanding together with the Buckeye Show here on Sunday nights at 8 o'clock, talking all things Buckeyes. Very, very good stuff. I'm Mike Chico Borman. Until tomorrow at noon, enjoy the rest of your Monday, everybody. See ya.